On the small desert planet of Iridion, a lone human named Mark lived with his two daughters, Lila and Mia, in a modest metal home near the edge of the settlement. Life had been hard since his wife passed away 2 years ago, and he struggled to keep the girls safe, fed and happy. Each day was a challenge, and loneliness often filled the quiet nights. Mark had grown used to the silence, broken only by the wind that carried sand and whispers across the barren land. He worked as a mechanic, fixing old vehicles and machines, barely earning enough to keep the house warm and the girls fed. Despite his exhaustion, he always smiled at Lila and Mia, knowing they were his world. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Mark heard a faint sound outside, something like soft footsteps on the metal roof. He frowned and tightened his grip on the wrench he held, wondering if it was just the wind or something more. The girls noticed his tension. "Daddy, what is it?" Lila asked, her big brown eyes wide with curiosity and fear. Mark shook his head slowly. "I don't know yet." "Stay inside, girls," he said, trying to keep his voice calm, but inside, a strange feeling of unease crawled over him. Then came a knock at the door, sudden and urgent. A sound that made Mark freeze. He slowly approached and opened the door a crack. Peering out, his heart skipped a beat, because there, shivering and covered in dust, stood an alien woman unlike anything he had ever seen. Her skin was a pale silver with faint blue streaks running along her arms, her eyes large and dark. Reflecting fear and exhaustion, she was thin and weak, yet something in her posture showed a quiet strength. Her clothes were torn and she carried no weapon, only the look of someone who had been running for a long time. Mark stepped back, unsure what to do. Who are you?" he asked cautiously, his voice trembling slightly. The woman looked at him, and for a moment she did not speak, only gasped, as if she could barely find her voice. Finally she whispered, "Please, I need shelter. I have nowhere else to go." Mark's mind raced, thinking of the dangers she might bring, of what the neighbors might say, and what the settlement guards would do if they saw her. Alien outcasts were feared and sometimes hunted. Yet looking at her tired eyes, he felt a pull of compassion, a voice in his heart saying he could not turn her away. He glanced at Lila and Mia, who had crept closer to the doorway, their small hands gripping each other, curiosity and concern written all over their faces. "Daddy," she looked sad, Mia whispered. "Can we help her?" Lila added, her innocence shining through. Mark swallowed hard, his responsibility pressing on him, not just for his daughters, but for this stranger too. He finally nodded slowly. "All right. Come inside," he said, stepping aside to let her enter. The alien woman's shoulders relaxed for the first time, and she stepped carefully into the warm home. Inside, the house smelled of cooking and old wood, a sharp contrast to the dusty wasteland outside. The woman sank onto the floor, exhausted, and Mark knelt beside her, offering a bowl of water. "Drink. You must be thirsty," he said. His daughters watched silently, unsure what to say, but their hearts already starting to care. The alien woman took the water with trembling hands, her eyes glistening. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft and musical. Something about her tone made Mark uneasy, not in fear but in recognition of loneliness, as if he could feel her sorrow and pain. Minutes passed in quiet tension, the wind outside howling like a distant predator. Mark knew they could not keep her hidden for long, and yet he felt a strange certainty that this encounter was no accident, that somehow she belonged here. "With him and his daughters, who are you?" Lila finally asked, her voice breaking the silence. The woman looked at the little girl, then at Mark. I am called Solara," she said slowly, each word careful. "I was cast out. No one would take me." Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears, and Mark felt a knot form in his stomach. He realized in that moment that Solara was not just a stranger, but a survivor, someone who had endured more than most. And though danger might follow her here, and though the settlement would not welcome her, he knew he could not turn her away. As night fell over the desert planet, the small family sat together, silent but united. The wind howled outside, carrying shadows and whispers, and Mark could not shake the feeling that their lives were about to change forever, that this unexpected arrival would bring challenges, adventures, and perhaps hope. And deep inside, a question lingered, unspoken but heavy. Could this alien woman become the mother his daughters needed? Or would her presence bring danger they could not survive? The first night had begun and nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the desert planet. Spilling light across Mark's small home, Lila and Mia were already awake, their small faces pressed against the window, watching Solara sleep on the floor wrapped in a thin blanket. Mark noticed their curiosity and he sighed, knowing this day would bring questions. After breakfast, the alien woman stirred. Blinking at the warm sunlight, her eyes adjusted slowly and she sat up, stretching her tired limbs carefully. "Thank you for last night," she said softly, her voice still quiet and cautious. Mark nodded. "You are welcome, Solara, but we need to talk about what you are and what you can do here," he said carefully, trying to balance caution with kindness. Solara lowered her gaze, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I mean no harm. I only seek shelter," she whispered. The daughters watched her silently, their wide eyes full of curiosity and unspoken questions. Lila finally asked, "Are you really safe to be with us, Daddy?" Mark looked at his daughters and nodded slowly. "I think so, but we must be careful," he said. The small house was quiet except for the wind outside. Carrying sand and distant echoes, Mark decided to show her around the house, explaining the rooms, the water supply, and the small garden they had managed to grow. Solara listened carefully, asking small questions about the girls' school, the neighborhood, and life on the settlement. Each question showed her intelligence and her desire to understand. As the day went on, Solara began helping with simple chores, fetching water, cleaning small areas, and preparing food with guidance from Mark. Her movements were careful and precise, and Lila and Mia began to smile at her, giggling as she stumbled slightly while trying to hold 2 bowls at once. The tension in the house eased slightly, yet an invisible weight hung over them. Outside, the settlement began to stir, and whispers traveled quickly among neighbors. Alien outcasts were not welcome in most homes, and some people were already staring. Mark noticed the glances and furrowed brows as he carried a bucket of water back inside. He felt a tight knot in his chest, knowing suspicion could bring danger by afternoon. Solara sat with the girls in the small garden, showing them how to water the plants carefully. The girls laughed as some water splashed onto their hands. "You are funny, Solara," Mia said, her small voice full of delight. For the first time, Solara smiled, a small but genuine expression. Her loneliness seemed to soften just a little. Mark watched from the doorway, feeling a mix of relief and worry. He wanted to trust her completely, but the world outside was harsh, filled with people who would not forgive the presence of an alien. A shiver ran down his spine as he thought of bounty hunters or hostile neighbors, and he realized that every smile today could turn into fear tomorrow. A sudden noise outside made everyone freeze, a loud bang on the outer wall of the house. Solara's head snapped up, her eyes sharp and alert. Mark grabbed a nearby tool, ready to defend the house. Lila and Mia clung to him, scared. "Who is it?" he asked, his voice low, careful. Solara stood slowly, her body tense. "I do not know, but we must be careful," she said. They crept to the window, peering through the thin curtains, and saw a small group of men, armed and suspicious, lingering near the fence. Their eyes searched the house, and one man pointed directly toward them. Mark's heart pounded, knowing they could be trouble. He whispered, "Stay calm. Do not let them see us." Solara stepped forward, her silver blue skin almost glowing in the sunlight. "I can handle this," she said. A strange confidence in her voice. Mark hesitated, unsure if he could trust her judgment fully. Yet he saw something in her eyes, a promise that she would protect them if danger came, and he felt a flicker of hope. The men outside grumbled and moved on slowly, but the threat lingered like a shadow. Each sound, each footstep from the settlement now felt heavy with suspicion. Mark turned to Solara, his voice serious. "We need to know, can I trust you to stay with us, to protect the girls if danger comes?" Solara met his gaze, unwavering. "Yes, you can trust me. I will not let them hurt you," she said calmly. The rest of the afternoon passed with tension under the surface. The girls played quietly, trying to forget the scare. Solara taught them small lessons about survival, about listening to the wind, about moving quietly through dangerous places. Each lesson built a bond, yet each word reminded Mark that trust had to be earned. As night fell, the 3 of them sat around a small fire. Mark looked at Solara and said, "Tomorrow we will need to be careful. The settlement may watch and danger may return." Solara nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "I understand. I will not fail," she promised. The girls watched silently, sensing the seriousness but also feeling comforted. Mark knew that trust would take time, that every day could bring danger. Yet he felt a strange certainty that Solara was meant to be with them, that somehow this alien woman, an outcast and survivor, could become part of their little family. And deep inside, he wondered if his daughters might find the mother they had been missing in her. The first day of trust had begun, fraught with tension, whispers, and uncertainty, but by nightfall a fragile bond had formed, and hope had quietly entered the small home. Their journey together was just beginning, and the desert night seemed to whisper that challenges, danger, and unexpected adventures still lay ahead. The next morning, the desert wind howled over the settlement, carrying grains of sand and the faint scent of distant fires. Mark woke early, looking at Solara, who still slept on the floor. Curled beneath her thin blanket, her breathing was steady, but something in her expression told him that sleep did not bring peace. He poured a cup of water and handed it to her quietly. "Good morning," he said softly. Careful not to wake the girls, Solara's eyes opened slowly. Silver blue orbs reflecting the rising sun, she took the cup, sipping carefully, her gaze distant. "Morning," she whispered. "The past, it haunts me." Mark froze, understanding immediately that this was more than tiredness or fear. Her words carried a weight that pressed against the room like an invisible hand. "You don't have to talk if you're not ready," he said gently. Yet he felt an urgent need to know, to understand the person who now shared their home. Solara looked at him hesitant and finally nodded. "I was cast out from my home world, my people. They betrayed me," she said, her voice trembling. "I trusted them. I thought I belonged. But I was wrong." She paused, shivering slightly, and Mark sat closer, offering silent support. Lila and Mia, curious, watched from the doorway, sensing that something important was unfolding. Mark motioned for them to sit. "It's okay to listen, girls, but don't be scared," he whispered, and they moved closer, holding hands, their eyes wide. Solara's memories flowed in fragments, images flashing through her mind like a storm. She spoke carefully. "I had a sister once. We were young, happy together. Then everything changed. A powerful group in my city wanted to control us, to use my sister and me as tools for their experiments and plans." She paused, covering her face with her hands, trembling. Mark felt a knot tighten in his chest, imagining the terror she had endured. "And you escaped?" he asked softly, trying to keep his voice calm. Solara shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I left my sister behind. I could not save her. I ran into the desert. Alone, shunned, hunted." Her voice broke, the words heavy with guilt and sorrow. The girls looked at her, eyes filled with innocent concern. Mia whispered, "You're brave, Solara," and Lila added, "Daddy, she's like a hero." Mark smiled faintly, but inside he felt the weight of responsibility even more heavily. He realized that they had not just taken in a stranger, they had taken in a survivor with scars deeper than any desert canyon. Suddenly, a noise outside snapped their attention, a clatter from the roof like someone or something moving in the shadows. Solara's eyes widened, alert and sharp. "They are coming," she whispered, her voice steady now but filled with tension. Mark's heart raced, knowing the dangers of harboring an alien outcast. They peeked through the small window, seeing distant figures shadowed and moving cautiously, likely bounty hunters or people sent to capture her. Mark swallowed hard. "We need to hide and be ready," he said, and Solara nodded, moving with quiet precision, positioning herself near the doors and windows as if she knew exactly what to do. Hours passed with nervous waiting, the wind carrying soft sounds of the desert night. Solara shared small pieces of her knowledge, teaching Mark and the girls how to notice danger, how to listen for the subtle differences in sound and movement. Each lesson was a thread of trust, weaving her closer into the family. Yet the shadow of her past remained, looming over them, finally, as night deepened. The threat seemed to retreat, but the tension stayed. Heavy and unyielding, Mark looked at Solara, realizing that she had lived through horrors beyond imagination, yet here she was, offering strength and courage to his small family. She was no longer just a visitor, but a protector, a teacher, and perhaps the mother figure they desperately needed. Solara's eyes met Mark's, and for the first time, a spark of trust passed silently between them. "I will not let my past control me anymore," she said softly. "I will protect this family, and maybe find a new beginning." Mark nodded, feeling hope and fear mingled in the same breath. The girls, sensing the seriousness but also the courage, slowly leaned against her, small hands brushing hers, and she smiled, tentative but real. "I am not alone anymore," she whispered. And Mark realized that despite the dangers that still surrounded them, something extraordinary had begun. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, silent and watchful, but inside, a fragile bond had formed built on trust, courage, and the shared understanding of loss. The shadows of the past were still there, but now Solara faced them not alone, and Mark's home, once quiet and lonely, was beginning to feel like a real family. The night ended with cautious hope, each heartbeat a reminder that danger was near, but also that trust and courage could overcome even the darkest shadows. And deep inside, Mark knew that the story of this alien outcast was only beginning, and their lives were about to change forever. The next morning, sunlight spilled into Mark's small home, warming the wooden floors and casting soft shadows on the walls. Solara sat at the table with Lila and Mia, carefully helping them prepare breakfast. Her hands moved gently, precise but kind, guiding the girls as they poured cereal and spread fruit on plates. Mark watched from the doorway, his heart a mixture of relief and caution. He had never imagined an alien could fit so easily into their home. Yet Solara seemed to belong, her presence gentle but strong. Her laughter, quiet and musical, brought a lightness the house had not known for years. The girls giggled as Solara tried to balance a cup of juice in each hand, nearly spilling. "Careful," Lila warned, and Mia clapped when Solara managed without dropping a drop. The sound of laughter echoed through the small home, chasing away some of the lingering tension from past nights. After breakfast, Solara led the girls outside to the small garden, showing them how to check each plant, water them carefully, and even harvest small fruits. Her voice was soft but firm. Teaching patience and care, Lila asked, "Solara, did you have a garden where you lived?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I had to survive on the streets. I learned to live in deserts and forests, but never to care for plants," she said. Mark smiled faintly, seeing how her experiences shaped her strength. He realized that beyond her alien appearance, her heart was kind and patient, capable of nurturing, and perhaps ready to take on the role he had longed for, a mother figure for his daughters. Yet the outside world remained a threat. Whispers traveled through the settlement, and some neighbors already eyed the house suspiciously, questioning why a human would shelter an outcast alien. Mark knew that danger could arrive at any moment, and he kept a quiet vigilance as the day went on. Solara shared small stories from her past, carefully avoiding painful memories. Instead, she told the girls about strange worlds she had visited, creatures she had met, and lessons she had learned about courage and survival. The girls listened with wide eyes, enchanted by her tales, and even Mark felt the weight of worry ease slightly. In the afternoon, Solara helped the girls with simple lessons, teaching them to read maps and understand the terrain outside their settlement. Each small lesson built trust, and slowly, the daughters began to see her not as a stranger, but as a guide and protector, someone who could help them grow while keeping them safe. Mark joined them later, showing Solara how he fixed old machines and vehicles. She watched carefully, asking questions, and even helped with small repairs, her hands steady and precise. He realized that her intelligence and quick thinking could protect them in ways he never could alone. A quiet admiration grew inside him, mixed with relief, hope, and something he did not yet name. As evening approached, the wind outside began to shift, carrying distant sounds of settlement activity and the faint threat of wandering bounty hunters. Mark could not relax fully, yet he saw Solara move with ease, scanning the horizon, alert and aware. She had become a shield, a presence that brought both safety and comfort. That night, the family sat together around the small fire in the living room, Lila and Mia leaning against Solara, her arm around them gently. The glow of the fire highlighted the silver-blue streaks on her skin, and Mark realized how much they had already bonded. Her patience, kindness, and strength were becoming the heart of their small household. Mark finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "Solara, you are more than a guest here. I can see now that you care for my daughters, that you are willing to protect them, teach them, and be with us. I don't know what the settlement will think, but I trust you. Do you think you can stay?" Solara looked at him, her eyes reflecting firelight and something deeper. "I want to stay," she said simply. "I want to help, and I want to be part of this family. I am ready to face anything, if it means keeping you and the girls safe." Her words carried courage, hope, and a promise. The girls clapped quietly, smiling and laughing. And even Mark felt a small weight lift from his chest. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace. A fragile but real hope that they could form a real family, bonded not by blood but by trust, courage, and care. Outside, the desert night stretched endlessly, silent and watchful. Yet inside, the small home glowed with warmth, laughter, and understanding. Solara had begun to fill the void left by loss and fear, and Mark knew that their lives, though still fraught with danger, were beginning a new chapter. The bonds of trust were forming, small but unbreakable, and the tension of the past was slowly replaced by hope, love, and the certainty that together they could face anything the harsh desert planet threw at them. The journey was just beginning, and the family was learning the strength of unity, courage, and understanding. The night was quiet, but the desert outside seemed restless, the wind carrying strange whispers across the dunes. Mark was repairing a small water purifier when he noticed a shadow flicker past the window. His heart skipped a beat and he quickly set down his tools, knowing that trouble might be closer than they thought. Solara, sitting near the fire with Lila and Mia, sensed the change instantly, her eyes narrowing. "They are here," she said calmly, standing slowly, every movement precise. Alert and ready, Mark's stomach tightened, realizing the danger was real, yet he trusted her instincts completely. The daughters huddled close to Solara, their small hands gripping hers. She whispered softly, "Stay behind me, and do not make a sound." And they obeyed, feeling safe despite the tension. The wind outside carried heavy footsteps and the low murmur of voices. Harsh and unfamiliar, Mark peeked through the window, and his breath caught. A group of armed men were approaching, moving cautiously, clearly searching for someone or something. Solara's face set in a determined expression. "They want me," she said, "but they will not get me or you." The men reached the perimeter of the small yard, their eyes scanning the house. "Weapons ready," one of them barked a command, and the others spread out, their movements slow and deliberate. Mark's fingers trembled as he picked up a nearby wrench. Prepared to defend his home if needed, Solara moved with surprising speed, her body almost gliding as she positioned herself between the men and the children. Her voice, calm and commanding, echoed in the night. "Leave now, or face consequences," she warned. Yet the men laughed, their confidence obvious. Mark could see the danger growing, the men drawing closer, and he knew they were not leaving without a fight. He whispered to the daughters, "Stay calm. Trust Solara." And they nodded silently, their small faces pale but resolute. The first man reached the door and Solara struck, not with anger but with precision, her movements a blur, knocking him back with a force Mark did not know she possessed. The others hesitated, startled by her strength. Yet they advanced cautiously, weapons raised, ready to fight. Mark grabbed a small fire poker and moved to stand beside her. Feeling adrenaline surge through his veins, "I will help," he shouted. Though he knew he was no match for trained men, Solara gave him a brief nod, her eyes never leaving the intruders. Confident and commanding, a tense standoff followed, the desert night holding its breath. The men tried to circle the house, but Solara anticipated their moves, blocking doors and windows with precise steps, each motion controlled and deliberate. Her strength and skill were unlike anything Mark had ever seen, and he realized she was far more than just a survivor. Suddenly, one of the men lunged toward the daughters, and Solara moved in a flash, pushing him back with a force that sent him sprawling across the floor. The other men shouted in surprise. Confusion flickering across their faces, Mark felt a surge of relief. Knowing the children were safe for the moment, Solara's silver-blue skin seemed to shimmer in the firelight, her eyes sharp and glowing with determination. "Leave now or you will regret it," she said, her voice carrying an unshakable authority. The men hesitated, unsure if they faced an ordinary alien or someone far more dangerous. Finally, the leader of the group signaled retreat. Realizing their enemy was not weak, they vanished into the night, leaving only the sound of distant footsteps and the whispering wind. Mark exhaled slowly, dropping to his knees in relief. "You saved us," he said. His voice trembling, Solara turned to him, her expression softening slightly. "I will always protect you and the girls," she said quietly, her hands resting gently on the daughters' shoulders. Lila and Mia hugged her tightly, their small voices full of admiration and trust. "You are the best, Solara," Mia exclaimed, Mark looked at Solara with new understanding, realizing the depth of her courage and loyalty. "You are not just a friend. You are family," he said softly, and Solara nodded, a faint smile touching her lips, but her eyes remained watchful, scanning the desert, alert for any lingering danger. The night passed slowly, tension lingering in the small home despite the retreat of the intruders. Solara sat quietly with the girls, teaching them ways to notice danger and stay safe. While Mark repaired the damage caused by the confrontation, each moment strengthened their bond, trust building silently between them. By dawn, the first rays of sunlight painted the desert in gold and crimson, and Mark realized how much Solara had changed their lives. She had not only protected them but shown them courage, wisdom, and hope. The danger had come and gone, but their connection had deepened, a bond forged in crisis and courage. Mark looked at the children, their small faces bright with admiration for Solara, and felt a quiet pride and relief. For the first time in years, he believed that together, they could face any challenge, survive any threat, and perhaps even find peace in a harsh and unforgiving world. The crisis had passed, but the confrontation left a lasting mark, reminding them all that danger could return at any time. Yet for the first time, hope burned brightly in the small home. And the family, though small and unusual, was stronger than ever, ready to face whatever the desert planet would throw at them next. The sun barely peeked over the desert horizon when Mark woke to a strange silence. The usual morning sounds of the settlement, the distant chatter, the clanging of metal, were gone, replaced by an uneasy quiet that pressed against the small home. He immediately sensed that something was wrong. Solara stood near the window, her eyes scanning the horizon with sharp focus. Her silver-blue skin reflected the pale sunlight, and her posture was tense, ready. "They are coming back," she whispered, her voice calm but carrying the weight of warning. Mark's heart sank, knowing that the danger had not ended. Lila and Mia, sensing the tension, clung to Solara, their small faces pale. "Daddy, what will happen?" Lila asked quietly, her voice trembling. Mark knelt beside them, holding their hands tightly. "We will face it together. Trust Solara," he said, and Solara nodded, her eyes never leaving the desert. Hours passed in nervous preparation, Solara showing Mark and the girls small strategies to protect themselves, barricading doors, setting silent alarms using old metal scraps, and listening to the desert wind for any sign of movement. Each action carried both practicality and a lesson in courage, teaching the small family how to survive and defend themselves. Then from the distance, the enemy appeared, faster and more numerous than before. Armed men approaching with clear intent. Their shouts echoed across the desert, and Mark felt a wave of fear wash over him. Yet he saw Solara step forward, standing tall, a shield between the attackers and the children. The confrontation was immediate, violent, and tense. Solara moved with astonishing speed, striking with precision, disarming one man and pushing another into the sand. Mark and the daughters stayed behind her, watching in awe as she fought tirelessly, her movements fluid, strong, and graceful. Suddenly, a man managed to get close to the window where the girls huddled. Reaching for them, Solara reacted instantly, throwing herself in front of him, blocking the strike with her body. A sharp pain shot through her arm as the man's weapon grazed her, but she did not falter. Her eyes burning with determination, Mark shouted, grabbing a metal pipe and confronting one of the attackers. "Stay away," he yelled, but he knew he could not match Solara's skill. His role was small yet crucial, buying time for Solara to protect the children. The girls clung to her, feeling the safety and strength radiating from her despite the danger. The battle seemed endless, the men persistent. Yet Solara never wavered, her endurance and courage pushing her forward. She blocked, dodged, and struck with controlled power, revealing abilities Mark had not fully understood before. Her strength was not just physical, it was strategy, awareness, and unyielding will. In a final desperate move, Solara managed to throw the attackers back from the house, their weapons scattering in the sand. The leader of the group shouted in frustration, retreating with the few who remained. Realizing that they could not defeat her, Mark dropped to his knees, panting, his heart racing. Finally understanding the true extent of her sacrifice, Solara turned to him, sweat and blood staining her silver-blue skin. Yet her eyes glimmered with resolve. "I would do it again. For you and the girls," she said softly. And Mark felt a surge of gratitude and awe. "You risked everything." "For us," he said, his voice trembling. As the adrenaline faded, Solara finally allowed herself a moment to sit with the girls, tending to small scratches and bruises. Her touch was gentle, comforting, and motherly. The girls looked up at her with admiration and love, realizing fully that she was more than a protector. She was the heart of their small family. Mark watched her quietly, his thoughts heavy yet full of emotion. He realized that Solara had revealed more than just her courage tonight. She had shown him the depth of her loyalty, her willingness to sacrifice for the ones she cared about, and the strength that could not be measured by appearances alone. Finally, as night settled over the desert, Solara shared small stories of her past hardships with Mark, carefully avoiding the most painful memories. Yet, in each story, she revealed her resilience, intelligence, and understanding of survival. The truth of her life was no longer a shadow, now it was a testament to courage, endurance, and compassion. Mark felt a quiet warmth in his chest, knowing that Solara's presence had changed their lives forever. The daughters leaned against her, sleepy but safe, and he realized that she had become not just a guardian, but the mother figure he had long hoped for, someone who could protect, teach, and love them unconditionally. Outside, the desert night stretched endlessly, silent yet alive. The past threats had been defeated, but the lessons of trust, sacrifice, and courage would remain forever. Mark knew that Solara's revelation, the full measure of her strength and heart, was only the beginning of the journey for their little family. And in the quiet, a fragile but unbreakable bond formed, built on sacrifice, love, and understanding, ready to face whatever the future held on this harsh and unforgiving planet. The sun rose slowly over the desert horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Mark stood at the doorway, watching Solara as she gently helped Lila and Mia prepare breakfast. Her movements were careful, kind, and confident, showing the calm strength that had kept them safe through so many dangers. The daughters laughed quietly as Solara taught them how to make small, neat sandwiches, her silver blue skin glowing softly in the morning light. Lila glanced up at her and whispered, "Solara, I'm so glad you're here." Mia nodded eagerly. "Yes, you're like our mom now." Solara smiled, a real warm smile, feeling a sense of belonging she had not known in years. Mark looked on quietly, a lump forming in his throat. His heart swelled with gratitude, relief, and hope. For the first time in years, he felt that their small home was truly complete. A real family united not by blood, but by trust, courage, and love. Outside, the desert was alive with movement. Yet the whispers of the settlement were different today. Instead of suspicion and fear, curiosity and cautious acceptance rippled through the neighboring homes. People had seen the bravery and loyalty Solara had shown, and slowly their fear began to fade. Replaced by respect, a neighbor approached cautiously, bowing slightly. "Mark, I see now that you chose wisely," he said, glancing at Solara with a hint of awe. "She saved your family and showed courage beyond any of us." Mark nodded silently, realizing that the walls of distrust were beginning to crumble. Solara turned to face him, her eyes calm and strong. "I only did what was right," she said simply. "I protect those who cannot protect themselves." Her words resonated with the settlement, showing that trust and courage could overcome prejudice and fear. The daughters played outside under Solara's watchful eyes, their laughter mingling with the soft desert wind. Mark felt a quiet joy, realizing that their childhood, once clouded by loss and loneliness, was now filled with hope, warmth, and guidance. Solara had become more than a protector. She was a teacher, a mother, and a friend. In the evening, they sat together around a small fire, sharing a simple meal. Mark finally spoke, his voice gentle but firm. "Solara, I know the road ahead will not be easy, but we are a family now, and together we can face anything." Solara looked at him, her silver blue eyes glimmering. "I am ready. Ready to face the world with you," she replied. The girls leaned against her, sleepy but content, their small hands holding hers tightly. "We're safe and happy," Lila said softly, and Mia added, "Yes." "Because of you, Solara," Mark smiled, realizing that her presence had healed more than just their bodies. It had healed hearts, filled a home with warmth, and brought laughter back into their lives that night. The desert sky stretched endlessly above them, stars shimmering like tiny lanterns. Solara stepped outside briefly, breathing the cool night air. Her past, full of pain and betrayal, seemed far away, replaced by the sense of belonging, safety, and acceptance she had longed for. She knew now that this home, these people, were her chance at a new life. The settlement, once wary and suspicious, slowly acknowledged her courage, strength, and loyalty. Mark saw neighbors nodding with respect, offering small smiles and even cautious words of welcome. The walls of prejudice had begun to fall, replaced by understanding and admiration. Over the following days, life settled into a gentle rhythm, filled with small routines, laughter, and learning. Solara taught the girls about survival, kindness, and courage, while Mark provided guidance and love. Together, they repaired the house, tended the garden, and created a home filled with warmth even in the harsh desert. One morning, as the sun rose over the golden dunes, Mark realized that Solara had become more than he had ever imagined. She was no longer just an outcast or a survivor. She was the heart of their small family, the mother the daughters had needed, and a partner he could trust completely. The desert wind carried a gentle promise, whispering of adventures yet to come, but also of peace, hope, and safety. Mark, Solara, Lila, and Mia stood together outside their home, looking at the horizon, a sense of unity and strength surrounding them. Their journey had been full of danger, fear, and loss, yet it had led them to a beginning filled with love, trust, and belonging. As the first light of day touched the settlement, Mark felt a quiet certainty that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, and their family, forged through trials, danger, and trust, would endure, flourish, and grow. The desert, once lonely and harsh, now felt alive, welcoming, and full of possibility. The new chapter had begun. With hope in their hearts, courage in their spirits, and a bond unbreakable, the past shadows remained only as lessons, the dangers of the desert as reminders. But inside the small home, love, trust, and understanding had taken root, ready to face any challenge together.